there are basically three things that have a big impact on if you're successful or not. It's your company's culture, it's the way that you work, and it's a tool that you use. Which one is easiest to replace? It's a tool. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the BPM 360 podcast. My name's Caspar, your host, and with me is, as always, and happy to be in the show as well, always, Russell. Russell, how are you, mate?
Well, Caspar, to be honest, you know me as a positive person.
I do.
But it's the mid of May. Come on, and the last time we talked about that Germans are spontaneous because they have to use the good weather, and spontaneously go for barbecue, and that's what I've been doing. The weather's turned so miserable now. It's really.
Yeah.
So you're in a hoodie, I'm in a hoodie. The
Yeah.
temperatures have dropped down by at least 10 degrees, and I'm looking outside and go, wow, this is, a long weekend coming up. Normally I'd be full of joy and spirit, but I'm going, what the hell? Come on.
Yeah. Listen, I stopped looking at the weather forecast. It just depresses me.
That's a tough one. Although on the other hand, looking forward to a bit of cocooning in May. Come on, what's that? It's totally bizarre.
Yeah. I think I heard my son complain. He needed to go out the door at 7 a.m. to the train to go to university. He said it's like -1. It's like, come on, it's mid-May. What the heck?
Yeah.
But anyway, so we're comfortable and cozy in our hoodies behind the mics. Let's make it a great episode, Russell.
Yes, let's go.
This is part number, I forgot which, of the mini-series on the BPM roles. And today we're going to have a slightly different role, a bit of an odd one out. Although I think in history, it was always considered to be a very important role. So are you ready for that, Russell?
I'm looking forward to this.
All right, good. So today we're talking about the BPM Technology and Tooling Manager.
Da-da-da.
That's it. So this is the person who owns the platform, pretty much, right?
Yeah.
Let me give you the rundown on what our good friend Claude has said about this, and then we can discuss it, right? So here we go. So as a summary, the BPM Technology and Tooling Manager manages the BPM platform ecosystem, process repositories, modeling tools, automation platforms, and process mining solutions, ensuring they remain fit for purpose as the organization evolves. I think we can fill up an episode on that sentence alone. However, character traits, technical adaptability, and vendor independence. The tooling landscape changes rapidly, and this person must evaluate options objectively rather than become wedded to a single vendor's roadmap. Oh, this is going to be fun. And then the required experience administering and evolving enterprise BPM toolsets, for example, Signavio, Aris, Celonis, Nintex, combined with integration knowledge to connect process tools with ERP and workflow systems. Blimey, that's a lot.
Oh, wow, I don't know where to start. There's so much to unpack here. I don't really, as a Jew say, müssen wir erstmal abschichten.
Yeah.
So we have to take this layer by layer. But something that really jumped to my mind. So, first of all, what I think is interesting about this role is that we also have to discuss how this role has evolved over time. So certain aspects that have been mentioned there, you also have to see, and the importance and of this role over time has also changed a lot.
Absolutely.
And this is not just true for BPM. I think for a lot of areas there was this like, oh, he's the person who owns the application, or he knows the tool. Now, in day and ages of cloud applications and simplicity, and usability and configurability and standardization, this this like, oh, this is mine. If you have to come to me if you need something configured, if it's not going to work at all. Yeah. And a lot of aspects, especially on prem systems. Oh, we need to do an upgrade. Oh, we need to talk to the application owner and the tool expert, how that is done, if it's possible, if we can have some configuration done. So all these aspects used to be, I think it used to be, well, I'm not saying positively, it was a very important role, because I mean, from the beginning, we all know that for BPM to manage these repositories, and so there is a lot of tooling involved, and especially as the tools weren't so mature and still evolving on a lot of functions and features and upgrades. There was always like a high dependency on the availability and the further, let's say, evolving of the tool. It wasn't just like supplier provides a new, now like nowadays, you just open up the door in the morning, open up your window, and then voila, there's a new feature there, cloud. The IT guy didn't have to do anything. He surprised himself. Maybe he read the release notes and can inform you what's going to happen. But in the days, you would be going to a roadshow and the people saying, yeah, these are the new features. And you would go back home and say, why don't I have these features and functions? Oh, we're going to have to do an upgrade. And there would be this kind of like this big process there. So over the time, there has been a substantial shift. And I think we should focus on which role he takes in these day and ages now with cloud. And a cloud environment where this high dependency on somebody has to also know the database schema when we do an upgrade and do a migration of the data and all these things. It seems to be like history we're talking about. Yeah, a lot of listeners will say, "What is he talking about with BPM?" Have a
but just one thing there. I mean, in the summary of this role, we talked about process repository modeling tools, automation platforms, and process mining solutions. Let's be very honest as well. How many organizations do you know where one BPM technology manager owns all 3 or 4? Very often you see that there's a person owning the modeling platform, there's a person owning the mining platform, there's a person owning the automation platforms.
Yeah.
They're not even the same person.
Yeah, that's true. But when we talk about ownership, I mean, in big organizations, you have like this application owner, which is like a bit of a process owner on a manager level. And I think what we are talking about, looking at the actual role, there's also this operational responsibility role of really knowing the tooling. And so when you get down to the expert level, I think ownership, you could say the BPM platform, expert level, then you are definitely talking like with process experts, you have like different, let's say, functional domains where the depth is different. So I think it's fine that we discuss like a mix of both roles depending on the organization. It's in one, and sometimes the
that's
platform
true.
and
I think they're merging. I think they're merging anyway, because you see the platforms merging these capabilities into a single platform more and more, of course.
As well. Now one thing in that context of history and what was mentioned, I think we can pick up as next, and that is
okay, here it comes.
Tool agnostic. Well, laughing. Come on. So, especially in the old days, and we need to discuss if this has changed. Yeah, in the old days, you would have people. It would be like, I don't know. You're 5 years old. Your father takes you to the soccer club, and he says, "This is your soccer club." Yeah, and you go, "Okay, Dad." And 50 years later, it doesn't matter if they go up or down or whatever. It's your soccer club. Now, and so I would say, when I got to know people that were the tool experts, they were so adamantly non-open. They just had their platform there, and they would fight to death for it. Which, to a certain extent, that you get attached to your application when you work with it.
It's your baby.
You have a lot of pleasant hours together, quality time. You get to know each other. You trust each other. There's a real relationship there. So you're not gonna, if it disappoints you, you still stick with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So, it's just like a real baby.
And there's another thing though, divorce was really, really messy. Yeah. So if you were to say,
Oh God,
I do
yeah.
not love you, my BPM tool anymore, I'm going to leave you for another BPM tool, you and I know that that would be,
Yeah.
well, that you
Yeah.
may think that you can leave me, but I'm going to tell you 100 reasons why that's not going to work, down to the
Yeah.
licensing agreements, the migration, so the platform, locked you in as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
so when I heard that, I went, "What? That's absolutely the opposite from the experience I
From
have." And I
practice.
think
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with
it
that.
still is
Yeah.
like that to a certain extent. You have people that will not. Funny enough, they will be so neutral, and management is so professional, but when it comes down to owning their tool and arguing or debating, if there
Yeah.
are other tools that also or maybe have better functionality, they get really funny.
But
And
the
you see people moving in organizations. They join the organization. Yeah, yeah, but I used Signavio. I can't work with ours. You said, well,
but
have you even looked at it? Have you ever seen it before? No, 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 no. And it's like,
yeah,
I'm a
well,
fan of
it's
Schalke,
yeah.
and
who
I'm not
who
gonna watch the Dortmund game.
Russell? Who's a fan of Schalke? Really?
Actually, I live near to Bochum, and
Yeah.
actually,
Yeah. Of course.
shout
Of
out to
course.
my biker guys. And they actually tolerate each other, but they will definitely not change teams or attitudes.
No, that's true. But here's my experience. I mean, I'm completely on board with the message that you have on. Listen, you're married to your tool. Period. If you work long enough with a certain tool, you're married to it. However, if I
Exactly.
look at yeah, what's happening in the last couple of years is that I work with an increasing number of clients that switch after like 1, 2, 3 years working with one tool to go to another.
Yeah.
So it seems like we have in, I would say, in the real society, where the average lifespan of a marriage gets shorter and the average lifespan of a relationship gets shorter. Um, I see the same thing with the BPM platforms. So the real question I would have is if we extrapolate that with the trend that we see emerging of tools into a single platform, it will become more difficult again to say goodbye to a platform as it is compared
Mm.
to saying goodbye to a single application. How you look at that?
Yes, and there's another aspect there that's definitely playing a role on the market. And we were talking about some, the news and whatever is happening. So of course, everybody wants every tool provider will want to lock in people, and
Yes.
the more use cases and the broader your capabilities are in a certain area, the more you can lock people in. But that's one side of the
Hmm.
story. The cloud application have made it more possible to switch. And
Yeah, I agree with
what
that.
I've seen as well, and I've always been tool agnostic, and I think a lot of companies and organizations don't. If they were to be much more open and tool not so, say, fixated, they would focus more on the real relevant aspects of BPM rather than getting into some battle and discussion around the tool and the way a tool offers it. Because a lot of tools, they offer the same capabilities, they just do it differently.
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
and and sometimes I think it doesn't really matter, which tool you take, as long as you take one, and not say like some companies that start up a battle and have three different tools for the
Yeah.
same use and again
Yeah.
for the same use case. The other
Yes. Yes.
aspect
Yeah.
is if I think about it, is when I used to do demos for with tools and people wanted to see functionalities, you always had this. They put down a requirements list, which is
Hmm.
nowadays I would say ChatGTP, in them days Google or whatever, or some consultant or some product that said this is like the standard capability list of the BPM tool, and they have like two Excels, and then you say, okay, so what maturity are you? How many years have you been BPM that you wanna you want to have all these features and functions in your system. And then they said, we're just starting yesterday. And I said,
Yeah.
okay, so maybe
Yeah.
that is a bit of a stretch to look for a tool. So they're already looking at capabilities in the tool that they may, if they're good,
Oh, yeah.
may need in 3 to 5 years.
But
And on the other hand, then you will say, okay, but that's your requirements. Let's do a demo. And you know what happens? You have two choices. Which one do you want to dive? You go in, so you have a tool that has all these capabilities and you show them all. And then they go, it's too complicated. Too complicated. And you
yeah.
go,
Yeah.
you know, and then somebody else says, and then the other alternative says, you just don't need that. You just need a very simple tool. I'm just going to show you some very, very simple things. Look, this is a model. You open it and you can move a box and then you can save it. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what we
fun.
need.
So,
Yeah.
and it really has always bugged me how, and that's something I would put down, to be honest, down to the tool expert. And that's where I agree that a tool expert consulting in a company, how to use a tool and what tool to use. Yeah, the what tool to use for what should actually be open-minded, and also be able to say, take a step back and reflect on which maturity of my organization do I have, what do they need, and maybe also be open for alternatives. Of course, changing there's always a disruption, and it doesn't always make sense that the first marketing guy that comes in or the new boss that comes in says, "I used to work with Ignavius, check out this tool." What is that? Is that strategically
It still happens.
thought? It still
It still
happens, but
Yeah.
it's not really. It should be based on facts and
Of course.
elaboration of what are we really not happy with, and what is the trend of what is our vision and mission
Yeah, of
and our
course.
maturity, and which tool at which time will support us better in such an extent better that it rectifies a switch.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I just need to move my camera a bit.
Yeah.
But I want to take you back because you said something that triggered me. You talked about the tooling manager. You talk about you're jumping into a tool selection, even if you're not really mature. If we go back to season 1 of our podcast, Russell, that's way back. I agree with you. See if you can remember. We did 12 episodes on the 4 success criteria of BPM implementations, right?
Yeah.
And we discussed tooling as part of number 3, the center of excellence, we call it, but tooling is part of that. And I think that maybe even in episode 1, we mentioned somewhere that one of the biggest pitfalls that BPM implementations can have is to jump straight into tooling instead of starting with, why are we doing this? What do we want to achieve? What kind of things do we need? So in other words, what's our requirement list? And I think that still happens quite a bit. And to tackle that, maybe, and this is just me thinking out loud, but let's see how you think about that. I mean, you as well as me, we get confronted with requirements lists a lot by customers, right? This is what we want in a tool. This is what we want in a solution. And 90% of all those requirement lists are actually the same. They're just they're just different based on the use case, why you select the BPM tool. Do you want to go really process intelligence? Do you start with process excellence? Do you start with compliance? I mean, that just makes that's a differentiating factor between the 10%, which is really different.
And that's a good, let me just jump in there now. Unfortunately, a lot of the requirement lists aren't use case focused. So I don't know if I'm talking about decades ago.
True.
Well, so we did we did a tool study where we said, now we're not just going to do compare them one to one. We're just going to focus on very specific use cases and then look at the differences of the tools, because the standard list of can you also, yes, we can yes,
yeah, of course.
So forget that, but say in the very specific context of a use case, then it's interesting to see the different nuance and the different philosophy of the tools and a bit of the vision there. And that's when, say, the integration of process mining into BPM could be relevant for, certain like compliance-driven, excellence initiatives and how they. So really thinking about that is something where you get the difference. So yes, I'm absolutely with you. And that's what people should focus on. Now, there's another spin to this story when we were talking about these 4 success factors. Now,
Mm-hmm.
and like with the roles as well, you always have this like, we're talking about companies that have like a lower maturity and they want to implement BPM because we're talking about success factors for implementing BPM.
Yeah.
And with all the roles we've been talking about, we're saying they just don't always fall from heaven. So maybe you can recruit somebody who's done 10 years of process ownership somewhere. He jumps into the company
Yes.
and he takes over an operative role and the process owner role. But a lot of the time, and also with the tools, you will have somebody that they haven't just been working with BPM tools for a long time. And
Yeah.
if they
Yeah.
have, they've been working with one.
True.
So
Yeah.
the experience
There's
they
yeah.
bring in and their superior knowledge that they bring in is based on one tool. So are they
True.
going to be neutral for evaluating other tools? Doesn't happen so often. I did have a tender where, honestly speaking, there was I think it's Switzerland. He was a long year working with Aris. They had quite a long list of requirements. And afterwards they said, in the evaluation said, our organization isn't mature enough. I don't think in the next 5 years we're going to get to that level that we're going to be using Aris, as I know Aris, and they
Yeah.
chose another tool. And I thought, wow, I was, of course, I'm deeply disappointed, but in that
Of
case,
course.
because we were, doing that for Aris.com, but the demos and supporting them on
Yeah. Of
consulting
course.
side and stuff like that. But ultimately, I would say, wow, I mean, that person, I would say, fits into that level of, I need to take a step back. It's not all
Yeah.
about me.
Yeah. I
and,
think it's actually
and
quite
being
mature, to
stubborn
be
about
honest.
it. Yes,
But
yes.
but that is an interesting point, because what I and related to that, what I also see happening a lot, of course, because when I speak with clients in an early stage, they very often tell a story of, yeah, we weren't successful the first time implementing this, and therefore we are changing tools. And the tool is typically not the root cause of why you didn't succeed in implementing BPM in the first place. So,
Mm,
but it very often rubs off on the tool.
yeah. So now that actually goes back to, so what you're saying is, if you break up your relationship because you're not behaving or doing something stupid, do you believe your next relationship is gonna be?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think it's if you what was it?
Says, with the next is going to be better, and then you
Yeah,
realize, wait a minute, uh,
yeah,
there's
yeah.
something. Maybe it's me.
Yeah, but Russell, true. If everybody around you treats you like an asshole, those people are not assholes. You're the asshole. That's the whole point. By the way, for the record, I'm not saying that you're an asshole. I really like you, Russell. Don't worry about that. It was just an
Yeah,
example.
but it's quite funny actually. But on the other hand, and that's something where sometimes a fresh start,
Of
you
course.
need this impulse for a fresh start, and then and the migration and the shift can bring something with it. And let's be honest, there are certain aspects where the tools are
Of
more
course.
suitable for
Yes.
more suitable for the culture, environment, and whatever. And then so I'm not saying that cannot be something that will bring a positive spin to it. Maybe because they step down on the complexity of a solution to a more simple solution because it fits just much more
Yeah.
into their use case / maturity. So there may be
100.
that there
Yeah.
as well. Yeah.
But 100%. But let me ask you the question then, because I think it's explained very easily why sometimes a fresh start works. there are basically three things that have a big impact on if you're successful or not. It's your company's culture, it's the way that you work, and it's a tool that you use. Which one is easiest to replace? It's a tool. You're not replacing a culture of a company.
Yeah.
No tool has that ability. You're not changing the way that people work because that takes a lot of effort. It's easier to rip and replace a tool and then say, we're going to do a fresh start.
Yeah,
and sometimes that works. Let me just be honest.
There's another way of going around that as well. If you need to, so you have to hire consultants.
Or a change management lead.
Yeah, well, if you hire consultants, and things go southwise, you can always fire the consultants first.
Yeah, of course. Of course. Yeah.
It's not going to change your situation, but
it depends on what consultants you hire. Yeah.
But if it's about finding doing the blame game, then first of all, get some consultants, fire them, and then you can always think about saying the tool is fault. Yeah, it's like tennis players. When they miss a ball, they start looking at their tennis rack.
But Russell, if you hire consultants from McKinsey or Boston Consulting Group, they fire you instead of the consultants. It's the consultants firing you, actually.
You have to be careful there. Yeah, there is a
I know.
But
you're absolutely right.
So I know that I have the impression we're digging more into tooling than the tool
expert. The role.
But I think it's important because it just and again we have a lot of merging roles. So maybe the person I was talking to actually, who took that decision was more of a head of COE from his maturity and his thinking.
Yes.
But he definitely brought in the tool knowledge and knew exactly how this would play out against his organization, which is I think, a very mature aspect of this tool expert role, not just knowing the nitty-gritties and the cogs and whatever, because again, that has changed. The necessity to know all these details is the comparison to, say, tools like Aeneas or Aris, they have so much functionality and depth. To configure it, you really have to be an expert on that level to know what goes and doesn't go. And a lot goes, but if you have to know how. Yeah. I think with more cloud-based like GBTech or Signavio, let's say 1 day training, and you already know if you're mature in process management in general, getting the hang of what is possible and not possible in the tool is a matter of a couple of days. You need to maintain it though, and that's one thing when we're talking about the tool in expert. The shift away from knowing all these details into more understanding what is the oil that makes this machine smooth. So like the data in there. So there is a bit of a shift or a merge with the architect to a certain extent, translating what he has from an architectural perspective into let's say the repository and the conventions that are somehow also related to capabilities of the tool and knowing the limitations there. So consulting on that borderline of tool capabilities and the data in it. So like the oil in the motor and fine tuning that according to the architectural. Now, that's more the role, and as you said, the evolving capabilities, the speed with which releases are pushed out over the cloud. Signavio release notes, they are worth reading. So there is a substantial shift of things coming, especially in direction of a platform. Yes, also looking outside to other tools and seeing what is happening there, and also doing like an internal consultant on how to use an IT application at its best. From an application perspective. And that's what I think is quite interesting. But again, does he do modeling training? I would say yes.
Probably not.
But
do you say yes?
Well, because he'll...
Interesting.
Well,
he might, of course. I mean, he knows the tool. But the real question is, should a person in that role spend his time on training users?
Well, I'll say maybe he's got, the cloud, it doesn't need maintaining, so he's got time to do the training.
Maybe, who knows?
I know what you mean. Principally, we would, that's what I'm saying, that the roles, they're merging. So you would say, modeling, that has to be all about, why you're modeling, how you're modeling,
Yeah.
and what we're modeling. But then you're going, yeah, but a model's a model, and it has to be, and you have to explain people how to use
Oh,
the tool
yeah.
from
But
a tooling
one
perspective.
model is not the same as another model. That's an interesting statement.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you why, because I think that goes back to the use case. Why do you do BPM? So why do you do process management, for instance? Why do you do process modeling? Do you do it to have a standalone repository for your compliance use case? Well, then, yeah, it's quite easy. Are you deploying your process repository because ultimately you want to use it as input for any kind of contextual layer or an MCP server? That's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, that's a good point. And definitely there, you should distinguish between a tool training and then the actual, let's say, modeling, BPM modeling
Yeah,
training. And
true.
and that's why we're not always, we try to combine it a lot of the times, because if you just do a tool training, what are you going to train? You're going to train, and this is how you create a model. And then they say, well, so okay, show me what you can do. How do you create a model? And then
Yeah.
they will start building lanes where you're going, oh no, we haven't hammered down the conventions yet. So we
Yeah.
like to do the architecture and the conventions and
Yes.
example models first, and then we do the tool training combined, of course, with the training of the method, of the architecture, and the reason why, and get this all covered together. I'm
Yeah.
just saying that's what I'm saying. So you are covering the tool aspect of it, but also then doing it in example on something that makes sense. Worst thing is if when you have all these training BPMNs and models flying around and architectures where like UMG model, I'm just saying, is a thing. You said, yeah, it's
Oh
good to
gosh.
showcase what you can do with ours, but please eradicate this from your brain. This is
Yeah.
absolutely not what we will be doing, because that is just, that's a mess. It's a showcase
Yes.
to show what principally is possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah. It's
and yeah, that's what I'm saying about also tool training versus modeling training. You have to merge them together to make sure
yeah.
that the people
Yeah.
get the
Yeah.
right idea of what they're doing.
I think the nice analogy is if you try to teach somebody Excel to do a household budget, and you are being trained by let's say a banking dealer on the dealing room floor using Excel for the most incredibly advanced things. It looks great, but half of it is not relevant for your household budget. You
Yeah.
need to know how to subtract and add and make a nice table. That's it. And the same with BPM tools. Principally, I think most users use about 10-15% of its capabilities. And maybe with ours, even less because it can do so much. Um, it's always a bit of a difficult thing. But principally, I think that he or she who owns the tooling needs to think wider than just the use case for the single tool, but how does it fit into a wider ecosystem of tools that need to work together?
Yes,
And that makes it
and
interesting.
absolutely, there's this consulting around how can you automate or make life easier by using reports, workflows, dashboards, integrations. Also, then at top of
Yeah.
the head, I would say these are the classical like extension, not just so pure. There's another function here, and also then thinking about eh, when the architects are talking about extending the methodology for a different use case, you have to support them from the technical perspective. So say, yes,
Yeah.
okay, look at that. We could do that with a dashboard, or there's a standard adapter to connect to, the CAN, and
Hmm.
that could be then.
Yeah.
So they're thinking about use cases and entering the discussion with, um, just imagine if we could
Yeah. Yeah.
do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then said, okay,
Yeah.
yeah, and now we would have like to have the risk and controls, but we have a separate risk and control system. Yeah. And then on one hand, you need to think about conventions and understand how maybe they want to include and map risk and controls. And they say, yeah, and now you could say, is the tooling expert the one to look at the model types that it provided and think about a solution? Principally not, but he has to understand, he has to bring that with him and say, and how could I fill these models over an interface coming from the risk and
Yeah.
control system? and
Yeah.
thinking about ways of automating, making things possible that would normally be, I would say, nearly impossible
Hmm.
around, because it would be too much manual work. So
Yeah.
helping smooth the way to a more integrated, holistic, integrated management system. That's where
Yeah.
the tooling expert has to be open for communication, has to understand a lot of what the architects are talking about, and really be open about, I want to expand this universe. And the BPM architects, they want to expand that universe as well, their reach. So they
True.
should really be very close in working together. If one of them locks down and says, no, this is the way you do it, says, yeah, but there's a fantastic new feature we could integrate to do this. Don't want to do it. We got our conventions. Vice
Yeah.
versa. I'd love to include the risk, but nah, this is it. Then it's not going to work. So hand in hand, they have to work. Really important. And one has to be open for evolving,
Yeah.
opportunities to grow this metaverse of BPM
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
architectural side as well in direction of the stakeholders. And if they work well together, that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a nice conclusion of this episode, Russell. You said it. They need to work together. It's a very well-rounded role, I would say, with quite the leverage, but it's also balancing like these Chinese plates on these sticks that they're trying to balance, right? You've seen them. They spin these plates on a stick. It's like having 6 or 7 of them that you're trying to keep running without breaking anything. I'm sure that we
And
can
and
talk
and,
about that for a long time, but yeah, go ahead.
you
One
said
last remark.
just one aspect there. So I think in an enterprise environment, and I think that's this openness. It and maybe we just to stress this as well. We were discussing a lot. He has to be open also to other BPM tools. That's one thing of it. But I think he has to be open to other application types. Like
Yeah.
so the huddling in just around BPM and let's not
Hmm.
discuss, because we know that getting divorced is not easy, but saying BPM is the only like source of truth and that's the only thing you're looking at. No, I think I would expect from somebody to be my tooling expert in BPM, to be
Hmm.
super understanding and really looking into what do they do with Jira, and what are they doing in Linux, and how does quality management work with their document management system, and ultimately,
Yeah.
on the other side of the river, somebody has a process mining tool, which is a different one, or maybe even another BPM tool. How can we get together?
Yeah.
Technically,
Yeah. Yeah.
but always been open for this discussion,
Yeah.
that somebody from project management says, and that you say, technically, I can help you how. And to be able to do that, they have to, and I think this is now where we're coming from, the depths of, having an on-prem installed system that you have to really maintain or else it's not going to work, and upgrade and all this. The maturity now is much more to an application architecture in a
Yeah.
integrated BPM environment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. I agree.
that's more
So
about what you need to what they need to evolve to. We're not even talking about the impacts that AI may have on this job, but
no,
that's
we'll
where
come
I
back to that
think,
later on.
yeah,
Yeah.
but seriously, this job has changed dramatically um, over the years, and
Hmm.
again, like as
It
has
will
also
change
happened
again
before.
dramatically.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. For
and
sure. So with the risk of opening up Pandora's box, I think this role needs to be really good friends with the enterprise architects as well. But
yes,
we're not going to go deep into that. We're going to go deep into that later on again. But for now, let's keep it at this, Russell, because otherwise we're going to lose people because we yap on too long about this role.
yeah,
I think it was really interesting though, because there's a lot around this role that's dynamic, that will change. It has changed. So let's see where the future takes us. Um,
cool.
and having said that, I'm going to thank the listeners. Again, I'm going to stress the thing that there will be an all about process management conference coming up end of September, early October in Stuttgart. We posted something on our LinkedIn company page, or let's say the podcast page, with a discount. You can get a 10% off on that conference if you come.
And very important, which really fits to this episode. Yeah. Normally you say, conferences, that's just something for owners and experts. But this, I mean, with the hackathon, that is something for tooling
absolutely.
experts.
Yes.
Come on.
Yes.
Yeah.
Come on.
So
we want to see you there.
All the tool experts that may not listen, that may listen to our podcast. I mean, all about process. And that's what I really like about this idea of bringing together like different all aspects of tools as well.
Yes.
And definitely bringing all together some techie nerdy people to check out the hackathon, which
it's going to be fun.
Feel very comfortable in as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're going to see you there, I hope. For now, thank you very much for tuning in and listening, and we'll see you next episode. Bye-bye.
Take care.